Good afternoon, everyone. In today's presentation, we, the Team Coalitions, will report the Philippine Accounting Standards 10, or the events after the recording period. Ano-ano nga ba ang mga tatalakayin natin sa presentasyon na ito? Una ay ang definisyon ng Philippine Accounting Standards 10. Pangalawa ay kung ano ang events after the reporting period at kung ano-ano nga ba ang mga uri nito. What is PAS 10? Philippine Accounting Standards 10 prescribes the accounting for and disclosures of events after the reporting period, including disclosures regarding the date when the financial statements were authorized for issue. The PAS 10 has two main objectives. First is to prescribe when an entity should adjust its financial statements because of the effects of events happened after the reporting period. Second is what disclosures an entity should give in relation to these events. A disclosure is additional information attached to an entity's financial statements. It is usually as explanations for activities.
You need to determine when the events happened. Also, if the events indicate that going concern is not appropriate, then an entity should not prepare its financial statements. According to the Conceptual Framework and Accounting Standards of Milan, the going concern of Philippine Accounting Standards 10 prohibits the preparation of financial statements on a going concern basis. If management determines after the reporting period either that it intends to liquidate the entity or to cease trading, or that it has no realistic alternative but to do so. For example, COVID-19 has caused significant market upheaval and uncertainty for business. Many businesses have faced mandatory closures and reduced customer demand due to lockdown measures. While many governments have pledged financial support for businesses through loan programs and salary grants, businesses' survival may still be uncertain. If the management decides after the balance sheet date that it is necessary to liquidate the enterprise, the financial statement should not be prepared on a going concern basis.
Events after the reporting period. According to the Conceptual Framework of Milan, events after the reporting period are those events favorable and unfavorable that occur between the end of the reporting period and the date when the financial statements are authorized for issue. Favorable events means it has a positive effect in an entity. Unfavorable means negative. So events may occur between the end of the reporting period and the date when the financial statements are authorized for issue, which may present information that should be considered in the preparation of financial statements. For example, Entity A's reporting period ends on December 31, 2021, and its financial statements are authorized for issue on February 10, 2022. So the events after the reporting period are those events occur within January 1, 2022 to February 10, 2022. So what is the date of authorization of the financial statements?
According to Milan, the date of authorization of the financial statements is the date when the management authorizes the financial statements for issue regardless of whether such authorization is final or subject to further approval. Ito yung date kung kailan pinapayagan ng management na mag-issue ng final statements regardless kung final na or kailangan pa ng approval. Take note, financial statements do not reflect events after the date when the financial statements were authorized for issue.
There are two types of events after the reporting period: the adjusting and non-adjusting events.
Now let's take a look at the adjusting events. Adjusting events after the reporting period. Those are the events that provide evidence of condition that existed at the end of the reporting period. Ito yung mga transactions na nag-occur between the end of the reporting period and the date when the financial statements are authorized for issue na kailangan i-adjust ang amount sa financial statements. Here are the examples of adjusting events. Number one example is the court case. The settlement after the reporting period of a court case that confirms that the entity has a present obligation at the end of the reporting period. For example, si ABC Company ay nakasuhan na nanggagaya ng others company's product. Kailangan nila magbayad ng 10K na multa sa ginawa nila ito at nag-arise ito after the reporting period. Dahil doon, nagkaroon sila ng present obligation to other company and because of that incident, need nila i-adjust ang amount in financial statement. Number two example is the impaired asset. The receipt of information after the reporting period indicating that an asset was impaired at the end of the reporting period. For example, si Stella Company ay nagbebenta on credit ng mga goods to Sparkline Company. At the end of the reporting period, wala namang bad debts provision si Stella Company. Kaso, during the finalization of financial statement, nalaman nila na si Sparkline Company pala ay na-bankrupt na at wala nang pag-asa na makabayad pa. In this situation, kailangan ni Stella Company na i-adjust ang kanilang allowance for bad debts and bad debt expense. Number three example is the asset purchase or sold. These are the determination after the reporting period of the cost of asset purchase or the proceeds from assets sold before the end of the reporting period. For example, after the reporting period, nasira yung machine ni company. Kailangan niya ngayon bumili ng machine para mag-continue yung production. In this situation, i-adjust ni company ang kanyang financial statement because this event provide evidence of condition that existed at the end of the reporting period. Pang-apat is the present legal or constructive obligation. These are the determination after the reporting period of the amount of profit sharing or bonus payments if the entity had a present legal or constructive obligation at the end of the reporting period to make such payments. For example, si ABC Company may constructive obligation siya sa kanyang mga employee na bibigyan niya ng Christmas bonus pero wala pa yun or hindi pa siya nare-record sa financial statement. To make such payments, tataas ang expense ni company so required siya na magkaroon ng adjustment sa financial statements. Panghuling example is the fraud or errors. These are the discovery of frauds or errors that indicates that the financial statements are incorrect. For example, si Provinciano Company ay may madidiscover na fraud or intentional manipulation of financial statements to create a false appearance. They are required to adjust the amounts of it in financial statements. At saka yung mga error na nadidiscover after the reporting period. For example, instead na 10,000 yung salaries expense, na-record siya as 100,000. Required yun to adjust the amounts in financial statements.
The second type of the events after the reporting period is non-adjusting event. This is the event which indicates the condition that arose after the reporting period or did not exist at the end of the reporting period. In this case, wala tayong i-adjust sa financial statement. However, they are disclosed if they are material. Ibig sabihin, kung ang event is material, we need to make a disclosure in the financial statement about the nature of events and an estimate of financial effect. Example of non-adjusting events. Changes in fair values, foreign exchange rates, interest rates or market prices, casualty losses, litigations, significant commitments or contingent liabilities, major and potential ordinary share transactions, major business combination, implementation of major restructuring, plan to discontinue an operation, changes in tax rate, dividends declared. Now let's talk about the casualty losses and dividends declaration. Casualty losses from natural disaster. Your building or other assets destroyed after the year end. This occurred as a result of events after the year end. Paano naman kung tungkol sa pandemic or what we called COVID-19? Although the first signs occurred before the year end, the business suffered more from the measures and spread that happened afterwards. So it is widely accepted that the current pandemics are non-adjusting event unless you came from an early affected countries like China. We might need to take a closer look to that. Dividends declared after the year end is another example of non-adjusting event because no obligation to pay dividends exists unless we are talking about evidence on preference shares that are in fact a liability, not equity.
How to reflect these events in financial statements. Halimbawa, si Cardo ay may-ari ng company. Hindi niya alam ang gagawin kapag may biglang nag-arise na mga events after the reporting period. There are two steps lang if ever may mga nag-arise na events after the reporting period. Una, identify muna natin kung ito ba ay adjusting events or non-adjusting events. After mo ma-identify, step 2 is the accounting for the events. Kapag ito ay na-identify mo as adjusting events, like what we said previously, you need to adjust the amounts of it sa financial statements. However, kung ito naman ay non-adjusting events and it is considered as material, kailangan mo lang itong i-disclose sa notes to financial statements.
For the summary of this topic, the objective of this standard is to prescribe when an entity should adjust its financial statements for events after reporting period, and the disclosures that an entity should give about the date when the financial statements were authorized for issue and about events after the reporting period. The standard also requires that an entity should not prepare its financial statements on a going concern basis if events after the reporting period indicate that the going concern assumption is not appropriate. There are two types of events after the reporting period. Are those events favorable and unfavorable that occur between the end of the reporting period and the date when the financial statements are authorized for issue? Two types of events can be identified. Are those that provide evidence of conditions that exist at the end of the reporting period. It is an adjusting events after the reporting period. And those that are indicative of conditions that arose after the reporting period, it is non-adjusting events after the reporting period. Where events after the reporting period indicate that the going concern assumption is not appropriate, these are adjusting events. A dividend declared after the reporting period is a non-adjusting event.
And that is the Philippine Accounting Standard stand, the events after the recording period. We hope you learned what PAS stand is. Again, we are Team Coalitious. I'm Francis Matthew J. Suma-oy.
And I'm Maicah Marie Alegado.
I am Jeremy Panes.
I'm Clarice Galope.
And I am Arabella Cruz.
Thank you and God bless us all.